Here we are.
We're here.
We are back on the Smarten show, a biblical view of parenting,
Education principles.
Yes.
Welcome to the Smarten show. It's great to have you here on the Lamb Network .tv and Facebook and YouTube and
all the places you can find it.
I think we're using smoke signals too, and it's all good. Well, it's great to be with you. It is August 8th, and we have a fabulous show for you tonight because we actually have our first guest. We're so excited.
We are excited. We want to bring you guests that are going to provide insight into different aspects of what's going on in our society. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we should delay any further. Could you introduce our guest, please?
Our guest tonight is the local chapter leader of Action for Canada. She's also got her own network called Niagara Unity Network. She has been involved in many different things regarding promoting truth to people. And without further ado, we want to introduce to you Angela Nicastro. Welcome, Angela. Great to have you with us tonight.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be your first guest.
Yes, indeed. We'll get you an autographed copy of something or other.
It's wonderful. Yes. Thank you for saying yes to us. We want to provide your insight here on the show. Darryl and I have kind of the last couple of weeks have laid the foundation of what's happening, but I think it's time people heard a different perspective. So you're a parent, you're a grandparent. Mm-hmm. Tell us, how did you get started into, I guess you're more of an activist at this point and really involved in the community. What got you going?
Well, I joined Action for Canada and became chapter leader in Niagara region. And I was learning a lot about the SOGI 123. And in Ontario, it's actually called Win 6 Ed Education. And just as I was just learning myself, because my kids are older and my grandkids are quite young. So I, just like a lot of parents, some months ago or a year ago, I was just starting to learn about all these things. And I've learned quite a bit over this past year. And so I'm trying to wake up other parents and grandparents to let them know what are some of the concerning issues happening in the regular school system, and why are some people in the community doing homeschooling, and why are more choosing to do homeschooling now that they've woken up and realized that there is an indoctrination happening in the schools. And so if you are interested to learn more information about that, Action for Canada's website, action with a number 4, Canada.com has a lot of information and resources. And I did use their notices of liability to serve both the Catholic school board and the public school board in our region notices of liability to just educate them, the trustees on the school boards, as to what the parents' concerns are and what the issues are, why the certain things that they're doing are against the criminal code. And I think they were surprised to hear that case.
We do have some U.S. Viewers as well. So for those of you in the U.S. who really don't understand the dynamics, in Ontario, the Catholic school is actually funded by the Ontario government.
So it's essentially a public school.
It's essentially public school because they have to follow the same dictates, because people in the U.S., Catholic schools, like, well, what does that got to do with anything?
All right.
So there's a lot of people who think that, the Catholic school, they're going to follow Catholic doctrine when it comes to education principles. And they don't think a lot of this stuff like SOGI, the sexual orientation, gender identity, critical race theory is going on in the Catholic schools. You have firsthand experience to say otherwise, don't you?
Absolutely. Actually, the worst offense in our region was with the Catholic school board. I was trying to get on with some help from a parent that's on the parent involvement committee, and she's a parent, and had access to the school portal to just get a list of books that we wanted to see if any of these concerning books that had pornography in them and some very inappropriate materials there for younger students. So I wanted to get a list of these books that were available in the school. So we were on the school portal, and we found even more disturbing issues that was on the Catholic School Board's portal. It was a link to the National Film Board of Canada. And on that, they had videos and interviews with adults about adult type of topics, such as rape, asking a rapist why he does so. And so children as young as 8 had access on the school portal to watch that video. And there's also animated sex, very disturbing content. So I brought that to their attention with the notices of liabilities. I did screenshots so I showed that I had evidence that this was material available on their portal. And so when I served them the notices of liabilities, I also gave them that evidence. And when they saw that, to their credit, they did remove that link the very next day. And so I was very grateful for that. And I did follow up with them and thank them for that. But I did indicate to them that there's much more that they needed to do. Unfortunately, I haven't got a lot of additional cooperation from them.
Okay. And you've been to a number of the school board meetings protesting a lot. And this is going on in the US. It's going on right across Canada. And we're going to get into some more detail on that. But you weren't exactly treated very well at these meetings, were you?
Well, none of the parents are. And I always told my group, beforehand, I discussed with them that we're always to remain respectful when we go to these meetings, be completely silent during the meeting, to be there to observe. And there were times that we brought signs to make our point. So a silent kind of protest, but being respectful, right? And there were some times that we did have some dialogue with them afterward. They stayed afterward to speak to some of the parents. But one of the times was when we were questioning them as to why they denied my delegation. I jumped through all their hoops because I needed to be showing my tax monies are going to the separate school system. And in our area, and I had just moved into the area, you're automatically put into the public school system. And so you have to make an application to then have your monies directed to the Catholic School Board. So I had to do that in order to be considered as a delegate. So I did all that. I went through and filled out all the forms, had it all done, got a emergency letter, a confirmation letter from the Municipal Property Assessment Center, and just as they needed. And when they got my letter, they said they couldn't accept it. And I think that was because they knew my name, that I had served them their notices of liability, and they were afraid of what I was going to say. And when we did question them about that at one of the school board meetings, they indicated that they didn't have to provide me an answer or a reason why they denied a delegation. There's no need for a reason.
Right. The topic, I think, what was the topic that you were trying to raise up? I think it was around June time. Yes.
No. I asked quite early on. I served them notices of liability back in November. So it was early in the new year that I had asked to delegate. Okay. Yeah. So, they did not change their mind. And so I was using other methods, emails, going to other meetings, the parent involvement committees, as well as the school board meetings, to be there to dialogue with them afterwards. I had some private meetings with some of the trustees that were willing to listen, and I sat down with them. Unfortunately, the ones that are in agreement with us, they're in a minority. And so when it comes down to voting for anything, like such as in the last school board meeting, that was in June, there was a motion put forth by one of the trustees to not fly any special interest flags. And that would include the pride flag. And there was a delegation on that. They allowed one. And it was very one-sided in this meeting. They had a lot of students there giving testimonies against the trustee that was wanting to bring forth that motion. They were put up to it by the school board, which I think was a complete manipulation, because obviously they don't really know this trustee. There were certain things that they were told that she said that was twisted, and so they had a different understanding of things that she had said, and were asked to write letters against her, and they were read during this meeting. So it was very one-sided. It seemed very clear that they weren't going to listen to any of the concerns on the parents as to why a Catholic school would need a pride flag when there's the cross. Why is the cross not good enough? So they were not willing to listen to any of those kind of points. And they continued to say that it was all about hate. And no matter how many times the people who were speaking, who had the opinion of not flying special interest flags, said that it was nothing to do with hate, that we understand that inclusivity is required, and is you want to be accepting to everyone.
So,
there's not.
So what
what
is the attitude of the parents in all this? I mean, what do you talk with a lot of parents? I mean, it's kind of you've got a Action for Canada and Niagara Unity Network is all about networking and coordinating with people. How are parents responding to all of this?
Well, I see parents are outraged by it. I mean, there are a lot of parents come to me. I have so many messages in my inbox constantly from parents asking me for my advice. What can I do about this? Especially after the pride flag was started to be flown on June 1st. There were a lot of parents that took the position that they were going to make it a point by keeping their children home at least that one day on June 1st. Some kept their kids home longer. But I was finding a lot of parents were telling me that their kids were targeted when they came back to school. And I think we've seen some videos. Some of the Muslim communities were being targeted and shamed for not coming to school on that day. But this was happening to many students in our region. And at the Catholic School Board as well, where students would come to school. There was one parent, she gave me she let me know about her SK child, who the day he went back to school, they targeted him and cornered him. And the teacher told him that more boys marry boys and more girls marry girls. And so when he came home, he asked his parents, why did you and mom and dad, why did you guys get married? Because my teacher said more boys marry boys and more girls marry girls. So why are you married? So he's very confused, and they didn't know what to say. And so I gave her some advice on what she could do to support her child, because that's the primary thing. But also how to make a complaint to the school and ask for this to never happen again, and to have an explanation for it and how to move forward with that. So I did give her some advice, but that is not a one-off type of thing. I get so many parents coming to me telling me about their child in class being asked, how do you feel inside today? Is it different than you're outside? Of course, that's very leading. That is confusing to children. It's telling them that your outside and your inside can be non-congruent, and you can choose your gender. If you feel like a boy today, maybe tomorrow you won't. And if you were assigned, they like to use that word, if you were assigned at birth as a boy, you may not feel like a boy. You may be a girl, and vice versa. So, and this is not just high school students they're telling this to, or even middle school. These are young students that are very impressionable, like in JKSK.
Well, they have no ability to discern and even understand what the issues they're talking about, much less make a rational decision on all of this. I mean, this is insanity what's going on.
Yes. And they start even with childcare,
with preschool.
preschool. They're being introduced to books, and yes, so that's correct.
Yes.
And the damage that is done to the children once they're exposed to all this, you can't really undo that. I mean, it's like they say, you can't unsee something.
I have heard a parent of I think high school student saying, "Mom, so this is a girl, Mom, you want to have grandchildren, but I don't think that's possible. Everybody in my school's gay. Nobody really wants to marry the opposite sex, so I don't know if anybody would want to marry me even. I mean, that's a valid concern even for a teenager who is thinking of having a family. How is it affecting families?"
Well, I did hear a lot from the high school students when we were doing our Jericho marches that you two are aware of because you joined me on that. We were doing some Jericho marches and prayers around places of authority in Niagara region, praying for the leaders there that they would make the right choices on things and to soften their hearts and understand what they're doing to contribute to the problems that we're fighting against. And so we were doing that. And for a couple of the places of authority, I went to some of the high schools. And some of the students came out and asked us, "What are you out here doing? And you're praying." They came and joined us in prayer. And they told us that they're having some struggles, that they're in minority in their classrooms if they think that there's only two genders. And a lot of them said that there's only maybe 2 of them in a classroom of students that are not bisexual. So they're really in a minority if they say they're just heterosexual, because there's a real brainwashing right now to say that if you don't totally accept your friend who's bisexual or homosexual or lesbian, unless you yourself are, right? Because that shows you're totally open-minded, and what they're being taught is that it doesn't matter what gender you love. It's the person that you love, not their gender.
Yeah, I filed a complaint a few weeks ago on there was a website that deals with consumer complaints over the pet store that we used to shop at. And they had a whole big, huge display right in the middle and said, "Pets understand that love is love." My pets, we have 3 cats and they've all been neutered and spayed. They don't really care about human sexuality. They just want to make sure they're getting their food and having their litter changed, and that's all they're concerned about.
But do you think that is also going to be promoted as the next, sexual...
bestiality, of course.
Yes.
That's headed there.
We have children dressing, and even teachers now dressing as furries. Yeah. So
I've got a lot of reports from parents saying that there are furries, and I've asked for pictures, and I got some from some parents giving me pictures of students blurring out their faces to not for privacy, but to show me, yes, there are furries in the schools. And I have not got any kind of evidence about litters. I was trying to get that evidence, but perhaps that may be an exaggeration, perhaps. But I have heard from some parents that was happening, but I wasn't able to get any kind of clear evidence on that.
Right.
Well, are parents allowed to go in schools and check out the situation if they have questions? Like, how easy is it to be involved?
That's another thing that's happened more recently. That's a policy that's come into place not too long ago, where we used to be some years back that we had the right to ask if our child was experiencing bullying or they were having some emotional issues, and as a parent we were concerned about what was happening in the classroom, that we could ask to attend and sit in on a classroom. But now there's parents that have been asking about that are being told that there's a policy in place now that prevents them from doing that they are not allowed to do that. So parental rights are eroding more and more here. So We know that when it comes down to gender confusion and a child wants to is questioning or isn't sure, or they feel that they're in the wrong body, they can get hormones, chemical castration very easily, very quickly. And that will lead to mutilation down the road, because that's many of them that are detransitioning now are saying that they felt enormous pressure to do those surgeries. That is happening without the consent of parents. The use of pronouns are happening without the consent of parents, and teachers are being told that they should keep these secrets. And since when was secrets allowed or normalized for adults to have, and secrets to be kept from parents?
Kids can't even take a painkiller. You can't even give an aspirin to a student without parental permission. But now you can have your body mutilated. I mean, it's such a contradiction, and it's such hypocrisy. And this is what really drove us to start School Pods Canada, to provide. We want to give parents a voice in their children's education. The parents have to be they have to be informed, and they have to have a say in what goes on with their kids.
Right. Well, and I was going to ask Angela, obviously the gender ideology teaching is an issue. Are there any other topics that parents have shared with you that are concerned about what their children are exposed to, or being forced to, or just without their consent?
Well, yes, I've in addition to the washroom situation, because not all schools have a separate washroom for trans children. And so that can make it very uncomfortable for girls being in the washroom with biological males that are coming in. And I'm hearing that some girls are actually holding it and waiting until they get home because they're too afraid to use the washroom. So that's a real concern. I've heard from parents that there's book clubs with the list of books that you can find on Action for Canada's site that are concerning. The concerning books. There's like over 60, or there's 60, 100 books that you could find that are alarming, that you will find in the public libraries and the schools. And a number of parents have complained about books that they had proof were in their schools in Niagara region. And this is happening all across Canada. That I'm hearing from other chapter leaders and other people I'm connected to. But in our region, parents complained about these books, and it was admitted, yes, we had this book, but it's removed now. Now, how do we confirm that? And how do we know that next September it's not just put right back into the school library, right? Mm-hmm. But there have been a number of these books that we have on our list that are concerning books that should not be in the libraries that are there, and they're in the schools, and they're in the book clubs. They're on the list for, the parents are seeing the list of books that their kids could choose to read, and there's a number of them that are in the Rainbow Club. I guess they call it Rainbow LGBTQ. Inclusive headings, I guess. And, sometimes there isn't much of a choice, because when you're in a book club, there might be a book chosen, and that's the book that they all read so that they can discuss as a group.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, of course. I hear there's a lot of pressure. We just spoke with a student teacher today, and she said that a lot of teachers even are activists and making sure that the children are activists.
Mm-hmm.
And, the other topic we discussed is the literacy is alarming in schools. Right. And so what are parents really looking for now? Like what do you hear that the parents want the schools to be like, or what do they want to achieve at this time?
They want the focus to be on the basics, on reading, math, arithmetic, all the, they want their children to have a good education. They've already suffered through COVID and are behind, and the testing proves that they're behind. And instead of there being a focus on getting that back up and beyond, there isn't. There's so much time being put into this gender ideology.
Yes.
Yeah, Wendy, who's watching on the Lamb Network, said that her coworker in Minnesota stated her daughter was complaining about the litters being placed in the bathrooms. That was a year and a half ago.
Okay, so in the U.S., but again, I've heard those being done here in Canada, but again, like Angela mentioned, that it is a little bit harder for a parent now to go in and assess the situation in the school building.
Because they want them completely blocked off. They don't want to give you access. You were given a trespass order for simply stating an opinion, and you're not allowed back on right now.
So can you tell us a little bit about that, if you feel comfortable talking about it? Or?
That is correct. So I am now...
because you're very scary. I mean, I just, very threatening. All 5'2" of you.
I'm 5'2", yeah. So, I mean, the children are taller than me, right? So most of them, even in middle school. So, this was, really a intimidation tactic that the school board at the Catholic school board chose to do in dealing with me. After the last school board meeting, I was there, and I'd been to so many of them. And as I said, I always, ask everyone to be very respectful and quiet and those, that kind of thing. And again, everyone was. It was the room was filled with parents. There was the other side as well. I believe they were activists. Many of them didn't even have their children at our school, but they were called in to come in and sit there with their rainbow flags and whatnot. And I know that because I talked to many of them outside, and I ascertained that many of them did not have their children at the school. But so there was this meeting, as I was mentioning before, which was very hard to take because they were attacking people who had the opinion that a separate school flags, separate interest flags should not be flown, and saying that it was a hateful thing. And it was against the LGBTQ community to not want a pride flag to be flown. So there was a lockdown the day before, just so I could mention, before the school board meeting. And it was there. Apparently there was a threat made to one of the schools. They didn't identify which school. All the schools across the region were all locked down. They sent out notices to the parents: do not come and pick up your children. They're okay. There's police presence, and we're monitoring the situation, but we're in lockdown. So by the end of the day, the police sent out a report, and this was the day before the school board meeting, that the threat was not credible, they had determined, and it was outside of Canada. Later, I found out that it was made from Germany, from a child who was playing online games with someone from the school, a high school student. There was some kind of tiff between the two of them, and he or she, I can't recall, from Germany had made some call to her school to get back at her. So this had nothing to do about hate, about the community or anything, but yet through the whole meeting, they had the students talking about how other students didn't feel safe to come to the meeting because of the hate and because of this threat that happened the day before. And they were not giving the actual facts about this police report that happened at the end of the day. And it was almost like they didn't know about it. So at the end of that meeting, there was no more speakers. The last speaker had spoken. And throughout the meeting, there were people speaking up and yelling out things, and they were not asked to leave the meeting. But at the end of this meeting, and it was too much to bear to listen to this nonsense and not correct it. So I stood up. Actually, I didn't stand, but I when I was sitting there, I just said very calmly, and I have this recorded, so I have proof that I was very calm, and I have witnesses that have written witness letters to attest to this, that I said very calmly, what about the police report? And what proof do you have about there being a threat or a continuing threat to the students? Because it said it wasn't credible. It was made outside of Canada. So I just made that comment. Other people had made comments not asked to leave. But when I said that, because I'm who I am and they don't like that I serve them notices of liability, they took their opportunity and the chair said, get her out, right? And so I didn't fight it. I said, fine. This was a waste of time anyway, this meeting, because we knew that they were going to vote down about not flying the pride flag. So I was not needed. It was not necessary for me to be escorted out. There were security there. There were police there in the premises. But I got up and left quietly. And the next day, they sent me a no trespass letter saying that my behavior was aggressive and belligerent, that it was against the code of conduct, that I was determined to be a threat to students and staff, and that I could not set foot on any school property in the region or buses or transportation of the school. So, I mean, that was just ludicrous. It is just an intimidation tactic. It's, very vengeful, petty. And so I have had to get a lawyer involved, and a letter has been sent to the school board. I have not yet heard back, but they were supposed to advise me of my right to appeal, which they did not do in the letter. And my lawyer had pointed that out to them. And we attached the 3 witness letters that asked for immediate withdrawal because it was unreasonable what they did. And I was not nothing I did was against the code of conduct, and certainly was not of any threat to anybody. And so it was requested to be immediately withdrawn. Now they can get back to my lawyer saying that I would have to appeal. And if that's the case, that I may have to take it right up to the Supreme Court of Canada. And I am very prepared to do that, because someone has to make a point to these school boards that are doing this to parents all across Canada, that they can't push us around, that they cannot just willy-nilly give a no trespass letter like I've heard others have had, just because they attended a meeting, just because they gave an opinion at a meeting. That is not a threat. That is not under the director of education who sent the letter only has authority to do that, to send a letter saying you are banned from future meetings or for being on the premises if there was a really credible threat to safety, which is they cannot show that. So I have so much evidence, including a recording of myself, that will show if I go to court, and they would have to pay for my expenses, because this is a waste of everybody's time and money.
Okay, so I mean, obviously parents aren't being heard, and they've essentially circled the wagons, haven't they? They control everything now. There's an agenda, and they're very militant about it. And we know this is a spiritual issue behind this, which is why it is the way it is. But I mean, the question that I think a lot of people are asking at this point, is it really worthwhile to spend the time going and protesting at the meetings? Or is there maybe other options?
What can be done?
What can be done?
Considering that it's so difficult to voice a different opinion in a meeting.
There were over 40 parents or something like that were protesting at one of the school board meetings, and you all got shut down. So you're really being shown that you don't have a voice in all of this. And even if you were to make small concessions, let's say you get the trespass order revoked. I mean, and you might have to go up to the Supreme Court to do that. Wow. But is it really worth our time to do that? Or maybe the better option is just yank our kids out of the school system. So A, they're not getting the funding. B, there's no one there to indoctrinate.
Is that going to be helpful?
I absolutely agree that I definitely have changed my focus in supporting parents with giving them resources for homeschooling. That's why you and I teamed up, and we did do that homeschooling info night, and we're talking about doing another one before September. So that is a good focus to have. And I think parents are realizing that the homeschooling is a solution. For me personally, because I was personally served this no trespass, I think that it's a matter of principle as well. And to set a precedent so that the schools know that they can't do this to parents. They cannot label a parent a terrorist, basically, for having an opinion that goes against their agenda. So that I think is something that I gladly take up for others, because they need to know that they can't continue to treat parents that way.
But they are going to until there's such a groundswell of backlash. And I think, what I have maintained for a long time is we got to hit them where it hurts. Hit them in the pocketbook. You pull the kids out, the school boards lose the funding, and then, teachers' jobs are starting to be in jeopardy. And then the trustees, it's going to have a domino effect. But the amount of effort that you have to put into these fights, it's crazy, when it's common sense that parents should have a say in what happens with their kids. So
it should be common sense, but look what happened with Higgs, Premier Higgs from New Brunswick, who tried to make those amendments to the policy to allow some, to have less restrictions on parents on their ability to be informed of their kids' change in pronouns, things like that, under the age of 16. And he got such pushback, right? He should not have had pushback that way. There were people threatening to leave his cabinet because how dare he say that parents should have some common sense is not common practice. That is for sure.
So just to shift focus a bit here, because there's a couple of other things I want to get into. Tell us about the new network you've set up, Niagara Unity Network, None, where we make it a habit to be unified. And
that was your slogan. I say none, the other none, but we're going to have none of tyranny, none of the indoctrination, right?
Right. Absolutely.
We'll play on words.
What was the motivation in setting that up, and how is it going so far?
How are you helping families now?
Yes, so this is a new initiative that I've started because I had a need to do some things that are outside of Action for Canada. They are a great organization and they touch on so many things. They have so much amazing resources on their website, as I mentioned before. However, there's certain things like issues of parallel society, certain networks that are like getting together between religions and including the LGBT community, who are also against this indoctrination. There's Gays Against Groomers as well that I try to inform people about, and not everyone is aware of. And so I was able to work more with all those communities, including the Muslim community, who is now speaking out so much now in Canada and from Ottawa, and is even starting a 1 million person march that they're trying to get coordinated for September 20th. And so to be able to network with all these different communities, I needed to set up a different network under my own umbrella. So I started Niagara Unity Network, and I'm hoping to be able to reach all different communities. If we have something in common, and that's the children, I think that's so important, then we need to come together and be able to make a difference and make an impression on the government that they can't ignore, that we will get media talking about. The mainstream media is important. And that will happen if there are that huge numbers involved with both exiting the school, because there's going to be stats that are going to be starting to be talked about. That how is it that the school has such a a low enrollment, right? So between that low enrollment and maybe having this March coming up in September 20th, that is going to be making a huge statement if we can come in big numbers together in unity to show that we're just not going to take this anymore. Leave the kids alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a question I have, we're talking about faith and people who believe in God, Muslims and Christians, but do you find that other families outside of those who believe in one God and so forth, do you find other families too are finding that this is unacceptable to them and are joining this effort to be able to have a say and teach their own children about sexuality rather than the school being involved?
Yes, exactly. Well, I mentioned even the Gays Against Groomers. So, you know, all parents are waking up to the fact that that there is an agenda. It's coming down from the UN and the World Economic Forum, and that this is global. And they are really putting forth a valiant effort that they're pressuring all the schools and dangling the carrot of money and funding when they have all these inclusivity, diversity groups. They get more money the more committees they have on these things. You know, people are waking up to that and realizing that this is not about inclusivity. They already had policies in place for anti-bullying. What is this all about with this? I mean, this goes well beyond saying that there's some families that have two mummies and there's some families that have two dads. It goes well beyond that. They're talking about sexuality to children that I mean, as adults, we don't care when we meet people what people's sexuality is. They like, why must you announce it? Like, I don't need to know. I'm just going to take you for who you are, right? And let's work together. Like, I don't care who you have in your bedroom. That's your own private business. But why they think they need to tell children this, right? Yeah. It's, I mean, really all they need to know is about the, you know, other different families, you know, sure, be respectful for that. But right. It goes well beyond that. And so I think the LGBT, and I'm leaving out on purpose the TQI plus, two-spirited plus, and whatever else goes in there. Because the LGBT
changes every day.
Yeah, the TQ sometimes is problematic. Not always. There's many trans out there that are saying that they're against this indoctrination as well. There's drag queens that are coming out saying they're against this indoctrination, and story time should not be done by a drag queen. So they themselves are saying this. But the LGBT community, you know, they take offense because they say, well, just let these kids that might be just gay and let them become an adult and decide who they are and what their identity is. And then if they still want to trans when they're 25 or above or something, because the brain does not develop until that age anyway for them to make such a decision, a permanent decision. You know, and don't have these kids transing and having hormones therapy at 12 years old, 15 years old. You know, that's just really messing them up, that they will never get back some of their functioning. Many of them become sexually infertile, not just infertile, but sexual non-functioning. They'll never have a proper sex life, you know, so
there was one kid I just read about in the news a few days ago, and he transitioned, had the surgery and everything, and has been going through all kinds of mental issues. Well, now he wants to tap in to the euthanasia laws to end his life because he's depressed and knows that there's no remedy. I mean, it is just, this is the worst kind of abuse that you can possibly imagine.
It is abuse. Yes, it is. I mean, that's the terms that we need. We need to be harsher in how we discuss these things because, you know, they don't have, the left has no qualms about calling us terrorists and a hate group. And we're not about hate at all. We're not against anyone's lifestyle. We're not saying that at all. That's why we are working with Gays Against Groomers, why we work with the LGBT community. And while all religions are all coming together to come together on this front, because we understand that it's not about someone's lifestyle or, you know, inclusivity or diversity. It's about indoctrination of children, that they are purposefully leading children to make changes that are not they wouldn't normally do. Like there's so many adults that realize that maybe they were a tomboy when they were a kid, and they worked it out. They were just, you know, a lot of women. That's why there's more women transing than men, or more girls, I should say, because they're young when they're doing this. Because a lot of girls are not comfortable with their body, and this is a normal thing that they need support around. And instead of supporting them, they're just told, "Oh, well, I think you're correct. You're probably in the wrong body then." And then now it's going to lead to permanent changes in your body. And so people are realizing that, wow, you know, if this brainwashing was happening when I was a kid, I might be thinking I was in the wrong body too. And that is wrong. And that is what's happening, because it is a social contagion. And there is over a 4,000% increase in transing in mostly girls, which does not indicate it's a natural thing that we're all supposed to be supportive of, because this is a natural thing that we have to, accept as part of what happens in our community. And that is not the case, because trans community is under 1% in normally. And it's not because, well, now there's more acceptance for it, and that's why it's increased. That is so not true. If you look at all the research on this and all the different positions and on it, you realize that that's just not true.
Yeah.
Well, I think this September 20th March, what I'm hearing from the people who are discussing it, people are not even so much protesting the fact that there's different genders, or people might identify as different things, but people are protesting the fact that parents now have no say in this, and this is a big secret. And so parents are protesting the fact that they, it's almost like the state's trying to take the children away from them. Well, not almost, they are. But also, like you said, those children before the age of 25, and we were all pretty mature, you know, in our early 20s, are making these big decisions. And in Teachers College was taught that we need to be the adults in those children's lives, need to be their guides, to point out to them the long-term effects of what they're doing, because they're not capable of doing that themselves. So if the parents are cut off from that thought process, then whoever has the agenda is going to determine what the children are going to do.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about this march on the 20th of September? I mean, this is sounding like it's going to be a big deal. I mean, 1 million person march. And it was even covered just a couple of days ago on Redacted with Clayton and Natalie Morris. They spoke to a journalist in Ottawa about this. So it's being organized by a Muslim guy. And I think, you know, as much as Justin Trudeau embraced the Muslim community for convenience, of course, I mean, he never really cared about any of us. But, you know, now that it's kind of, you cannot support the gay community and the Muslim community at the same time and expect to be able to juggle that, because eventually they are going to come into conflict with each other. And I think what's happened is that Trudeau has now awakened the Kraken.
Well, but there's division. So how do you encourage people to be involved in this or around it?
Well, from what I understand, the 1 million person is they're encouraging people to come to Ottawa.
Yeah.
For that 1 million, because that is where Parliament is, and that's when they will be coming back to Parliament that week, and so it will get some news coverage if there's 1 million people there at Parliament.
Well, this is reminiscent of the truckers' convoy last year.
Yeah, exactly. So again, Canada can lead again on this front, and this time because of the children. And, you know, Ottawa has had in the past, leading up to this, a number of protests where Christians, Muslims, Jewish faith, every faith, and the LGBT community were all coming together and it was being highlighted in the media, and it's being covered by, Fox News, all those different places in the States as well. So it's getting a lot of coverage that, that this has been taking place. And so I think more people are aware of it. More people want to join in. And so I feel like there's going to be a lot of people there. Hopefully it is going to be 1 million people. I would encourage everyone, if you can, do that. And if you can't, for some reason, be there, because not everyone can. You have restrictions with work or different things. I suggest write your MPs, your MPPs that day, so that they're flooded with their emails about saying, I can't be there today, but I'm emailing you because this is how I feel. And so that if they're not seeing the 1 million people there in person, then at least you're adding to your voice being heard as one of those that flooded them with emails that day. And so make sure that your local MP and MPP know how you feel about this. Because what's happening now, I should add, is that, they are starting to teach the teachers that they have to refer to all students as they and them. And so no longer is it that, if that child wants to change their pronouns, and the thought is by a lot of left leaning people that, you have to respect their pronouns. If that's the pronouns, then you have to use them. But now it's not a matter of that this child feels different and should be respected for changing their pronouns. It's every child now is being told that they are going to be no longer a he or a she, or a he, a he or a him or a her. It has to be a they and a them. So it's really removing, the humanity of the kids. I mean, Can you imagine growing up being called a they or a them? Now, what's going to happen with these kids? This is a huge problem. And not only that, but they're coming up with School Pass. If you look up schoolpass.com, they're coming up with the idea of having children have a digital ID. And while that might sound like they try to sell it as being safer for your kids, it's if put in the wrong hands, whether it's hacked or just managed by the wrong people, they have all this information on your children. And they've been gathering this information by surveys with all these kids for many months. And that's what we've been trying to tell the school boards that we're against, all these surveys asking personal questions of students, all this for this past year. They're asking them about, their room. How many rooms do you have in your house? Do you have internet? Do you, like things that it's not about. Yeah, like it's also asking them about what gender do you identify as, and all these things, which they're like, why are they asking the kids these things? But also very personal and odd questions about their home life. And so where is this information going? There's a database being collected on these children. And then now they're talking more and more about the digital ID passes. That's going to make it safe for the children. And that'll
lead us to the 15-minute cities.
Yes, the 15 minutes, it's all connecting, right? So that's all about control. It's not about safety. We know that, just like the 15-minute cities are not about safety and convenience. It's about control.
Right.
And, and then also I'm hearing more and more from parents that their kids are getting vaccinated at schools and different places without their consent. And that's going to happen. And, there's going to be the next pandemic and the next thing. And every time this happens, and the world, the WHO is going to be involved, they're gonna come out with it saying that parents don't have a say, that is required, and they're going to end up having their kids vaccinated against their permission.
We got about 1 minute left, and so we just want to encourage parents that take your kids out. You cannot entrust them in the school system anymore. They're being taught critical race theory, which is taught racism, this whole gender craziness, and it's all madness. It has nothing. Kids should just be focused on academics. Kids should be focused on learning how to play together and learning life skills that are going to
problem
encourage
solving
them.
and so forth. And like you said, Angela, we are hearing that the medical is coming back. I mean, parents are still being told that they need to present a full vaccination record and so forth. So yes, we think there's just too many things
That's
going
not
on.
true. They try to do that, and they tell you have to do things, but you really don't. Even on the government website, you can find something that says
So
that
that's why
that's
why it's so important to know your rights. All right, Angela, it's been great having you tonight. Thank you so much for sharing with us. You're doing great work. You can catch her at Niagara Unity Network on Facebook. Do you have a website up?
No, not on Facebook yet, but I do have on Telegram.
Okay.
Telegram.
So you can reach out to her on Telegram, Niagara Unity Network. And you can also go visit the
Action for Canada on Facebook.
Yeah. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Smarten Up. And thanks very much. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.